Cheers, thank you. Hello everybody, welcome to this Culture and Creativity Policy Network Dialogues event. The network is hosted at the University of Southampton. I'm one of the coordinators, Dan Ashton, Professor of Cultural and Creative Industries based in Winchester School of Art, along with Dr Joseph Owen, who will come on in a second. The network really is around gathering, amplifying and supporting expertise in creative approaches to policymaking, which really speaks well to today's talk, and also cultural policy research. It's about sharing resources, supporting collaborations, and exploring different ways of doing policy engagement and policy impact. I'm going to add a link into the chat for our page hosted on the Public Policy Southampton site. And for internal colleagues, you'll also find a link to a SharePoint, which has details of forthcoming events. Really looking forward to today's talk with Charlie, and over to you, Joseph, for further intros. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, so Dan and I have set up this network, and we've been putting resources together to help colleagues. But the main thing that we really wanted to do was start getting people in to talk about creative policy making and cultural policy. And I think these dialogue sessions, which this is the first, is really keen to get some kind of external perspectives from practitioners, researchers who have been really kind of involved with pioneering new approaches to creative policy making. So I'm really glad, really delighted that we've got Dr Charlie Ingram with us today. I've known Charlie quite a few years now through various different research programs and institutes who are both kind of involved in the HRC Place program, and so I've known Charlie a long time and been really interested in his work. So let's give it the formal to do. Charlie Ingram is a researcher, theatre director, filmmaker and producer. He's a postdoctoral research fellow at Coventry University Centre for Dance Research. And now I'll hand over to Charlie. Thank you, Charlie.
Thanks, Joseph, and thanks, Dan. Just before I begin, just like to thank the Culture, Creativity and Policy Network for hosting me this afternoon, and University of Southampton more broadly. I'm just going to sort of share oh, hang on, stop that. I've got to share the sound because you're going to get some lovely videos. Okay, first things first, can you see that? Excellent. So, this afternoon, I'm going to introduce you and give you a bit of a whistle-stop tour to some of my work surrounding arts-based approaches to evaluating impact, specifically Headphone Verbatim as a tool. But first, I will start with some research contexts. So the value of evaluating the apparent successes or shortcomings of UK policymaking initiatives are widely documented and contested. These evaluations serve as advice to policymakers that these commissioned initiatives are feasible and worth investment in the context of an increasingly complex economy. However, recent developments such as the global pandemic, gender violence, Black Lives Matter, and not least the climate crisis have accelerated recognition by policymakers that the policy cycle is failing to capture the needs of all citizens and exposes the importance of participatory methods of engagement, participation and impact across several research disciplines. Within these disciplines, citizen voice and lived experience are sought to deepen understanding behind behavioural change as a result of policy or project intervention strategies. Within this, there are limitations. For example, a policy reform report published by the UK Civil Service in 2021 recognises that, quote, most policymakers do not consistently have the skills, incentives or infrastructure to find new evidence about citizens, end quote. Rather than overcoming market failures and thereby delivering equity and efficiency, it is argued that policy solutions are too often based on stakeholder opinion, and rarely are the voices and experiences of citizens used to evidence policymaking. Therefore, policy engagement methodologies as the basis of evidence gathering are themselves generating marginalised groups, the seldom heard, and creating barriers to access for citizens. Now, I was intrigued by this gap in knowledge and policy and this particular policymaking shortfall, so I responded by developing a practice research method of analysing and disseminating research data and findings through the media of theatre and performance practice, specifically Headphone Verbatim, which I've named Evaluative Performance. This research is built on my own experiences as a Headphone Verbatim practitioner and also as a practice research scholar. So, for context, verbatim theatre is a form of theatre firmly predicated upon the taping and subsequent transcription of interviews with ordinary people done in the context of research into a particular region, subject area, issue, event, or a combination of these things. This primary source is then transformed into a text which is acted, usually by the performers who collect the material in the first place. Over time, verbatim theatre has adapted to also include the practices of headphone verbatim as a subgenre. Headphone verbatim brings its recording and playback devices out of the rehearsal room and onto the stage, forcing the actor to, quote, repeat the script as immediately and as exactly as possible, every stammer, pause, and repetition, end quote, simultaneously with the recording playing through headphones placed on the actor's ears. This forces the actor to actively listen at the same time as present the words of the interviewee. In this sense, an audience is given the physical signs that what they're watching is both based on real interviews, but is nonetheless an imitation of that reality through actors. So, evaluative performance is an arts-based method and approach of evaluation that I developed during my PhD studies. Briefly, it's a collaboration between this headphone verbatim arts practice and social science evaluation frameworks. It's a method of data gathering that involves a performance created solely from the words spoken by interview participants, combined with a post-performance contextual discussion. Interview data is collected by the researcher and then is edited into a performance based around a particular research inquiry. Key to this approach is that questions are asked of the beneficiary or the participant, such as citizens. This methodological approach comprises of the following. Firstly, the interviewing of key participants of the research, using open and semi-structured interviews as the basis of evidence gathering. The development of a chronological edit using tools such as Audacity from each separate interview. The recorded material, once edited, is sent to the participant for final sign-off, giving the participant an opportunity to review and make recommendations, ensuring that they're represented correctly. The production of an audio script, whereby no written script is produced, but instead a score of participant voices that actors listen to, but ultimately do not learn. And then the evaluative data is presented in a performance using headphone verbatim technique of delivery, as opposed to a written report, usually to industry professionals, project funders, and appropriate policymakers, academics, and publics. Previous research into the development of this method and approach has shown that evaluative performance has the potential to offer an effective and compelling alternative to a written report, quotes, figures, or tables to further articulate and evidence citizen experience in a place where policymaking is currently seen to be falling short. In this sense, evaluative performance as an approach contributes to the observable push for research evaluation to become more transparent and participatory. In this way, evaluation is not just conducted and managed by research and policymakers, but instead shares a process of ownership with arts practitioners and members of the public. By utilising an arts-based method of gathering and dissemination, stories of participants' engagement, the participants' words are presented in an environment that amplifies their attitudes, opinions, and experiences to its audience, rather than rendering them through a mode of analysis that might distance them from the findings. I'll now move on to 3 case studies where this method has been trialled in different research contexts. The first surrounding civic pride levels during Coventry UK City of Culture 2021. The second, consulting young people on smart energy initiatives. And the third, which I'll go into slightly more depth, is regarding the efficacy of crime and antisocial behaviour policy at live events and festivals, namely Reading Festival from the years 2000 to 2024. Now, I've also completed a case study surrounding visual art and a visual arts organisation, Coventry Biennial, but in the interest of time, I'll just focus on these 3. So I'll start with Coventry UK City of Culture. But for context, in February 2023, the Coventry UK City of Culture Trust went into administration after several instances of financial difficulty during the delivery year and in its legacy phase. This has had unknown consequences for the artistic community of the city and the reputation of the City Council and other partner institutions. While a fascinating site for research, I'll not be tackling this particular subject as the research activity took place from May 2019 until September 2022. I mention the administration of the trust here to address the elephant in the room surrounding this project, as the organisation I was evaluating at the time no longer exists. So currently, 3 iterations of UK City of Culture have been completed. Derry, London, Derry in 2013, Hull in 2017, Coventry in 2021, with Bradford serving as the current holder of the UK City of Culture title, due to be completed this year. The ability to track the impacts associated with UK City of Culture programmes has been exemplified by 3 large-scale evaluation projects. Both Derry, London, Derry and Hull have compiled evaluation reports with a heavy reliance on quantitative data. Hull, much more than Derry, London, Derry, has broadened its roster of methods to include qualitative means of data collection. For Coventry, we see a more balanced approach, placing equal emphasis on both quantitative and qualitative methods of data collection. However, in all these cases, the research focuses on the opinions of key stakeholders. Therefore, questions surrounding the depth of engagement by citizens grow to be important. So this project was interested in arguments made by the UK City of Culture evaluators for how citizen-focused projects can impact city communities, specifically that these projects support the building of civic pride. Drawing from human geography and social science, I found that civic pride can be seen both as a cognitive and emotional indicator of success through the ways that citizens respond to the civic environment, identified through several behavioural dimensions. I theorised that if efficacy via these indicators was observed, then it could be concluded that a wide cross-section of the population had developed positive associations with the civic environment, i.e. civic pride had increased. With this in mind, I followed the Love Coventry programme, a community engagement programme ran by the UK City of Culture Collaborative City Producing Team. I interviewed participants of the programme at 2 different periods, firstly in March to May 2021, and secondly in September 2021. After a period of casting and rehearsal, the evaluative performance was presented to an invited audience late 2021, with a subsequent post-show discussion. Here's a short clip to show you what it looked like. Apologies for the terrible quality of the video. Has City of Culture had an impact on your local community since we last spoke?
It just feels like a completely different city to me. Completely different city. I don't know about you, but it's just awake. It's just buzzing at the moment. Just so much going on.
One of the young people said, which I thought was funny, it made me like Coventry, miss. I was like, well, I'm glad about that. It's made me like it a bit more too, if I'm honest.
Has City of Culture shifted anything about your connection with the city?
It's made me realise, more than ever, the importance of the creative arts, the theatre, public theatre shows, your musicians, your visual artists.
I don't think it has, because I've always known what we have in the city and what we can achieve in the city. Given the chance, I think given the great opportunities we had, it's still felt quite stifled.
No, I definitely think the City of Culture has put Coventry on the map for a different reason, rather than in the media for negative reasons or not being the prettiest of cities. And I think it's made it look better too, like visually look better. But I think definitely it's put arts on the map as well.
So, in terms of civic pride, I found that changes in civic pride did occur, but not large enough to claim that an increase had occurred. Participants often articulated their feelings towards Coventry through a relationship with the built environment. Many narrative arcs from the first collection phase track developments regarding the physical landscape of the changing city. However, this shifted in the second collection phase towards articulating pride around the people of the city. Also, reflections from the post-show discussion gave evidence that while there was an observable change in civic pride, further indicated in the 2 tables here, the notions of where this change could be attributed to was difficult to define and was not specifically because of their engagements with the Love Coventry project. But I'll move on to my next case study. So, despite young people being the generation most threatened by climate change globally, I observed that youth voices continued to be underrepresented in energy policy consultations on the challenges and solutions to develop a sustainable, affordable and cleaner energy future. Current research foci around energy systems, they rest with adults, predominantly energy stakeholders and industry actors around subjects such as smart local energy systems, which are energy systems whereby renewable energy sources such as wind, solar, hydroelectric and biomass are integrated with a digitized cyber-physical system in order to produce, contain and regulate energy using artificial intelligence. Now, as digital technologies continue to play an essential role in the energy sector, the need to understand the level of education and understanding that young people might have about energy systems, data collection, management and sharing became quite apparent. In particular, how young people are informed about these energy systems, their practical use and the challenges in their operationalization to accelerate the uptake and fully maximize the benefits of these systems. Now, methodologies used to capture a broad range of young people's experiences rest solely with the social sciences, with little to no examples where a practice research methodology has been used to capture young people's opinions towards these particular energy policy initiatives. So I therefore took the methodology of evaluative performance and decided to test if this approach was adaptable and applicable to evaluating energy policy initiatives, whilst also giving a voice to a marginalised youth voice. So I developed and piloted a resource toolkit aimed at key stages 4 and 5 to practically impart key research learnings and innovation to the students around smart local energy systems, energy data and AI. This toolkit comprised of a workshop accompanied by a resource pack that was used to follow and contextualise the discussion. Directly after the workshop, I held focus groups with 3 schools with the intention to capture reflections regarding their experiences of the workshop, instances where new learning took place, their opinions towards smart local energy systems, energy data, ethics and AI, and asked participants to reflect upon changes they wanted to see in the energy sector in the future. These focus groups recordings were then transformed in a similar way as the previous case study into a piece of Headphone Verbatim.
So, what do you think is important when thinking about particularly around energy, with the data collection, storage, its use, and how it's shared?
Policies having like strict rules in place, so like that information doesn't end up to a company that we didn't consent to having.
Personal information should be given out if you allow it to be, and you should be asked before it is given out to anyone else.
So, looking forward, how would you like to see the energy system as it currently is change in the future?
Make it more renewable, yeah, and like more sustainable.
It would be nice for the price to not
So
go up.
we usually care about what happens to us, whereas we still have to live through it.
It feels like all their issues have been put onto us.
Yeah, like less using like coal and mining and less extension, and more using like solar panels, wind, like stuff that's going to be around for a long time.
Efficiency is really important. We're wasting like 60%, which is probably what's like leading to a lot of the increases in costs and stuff like that. So I think that would be one major fix that can be done.
Sorry, what was the question?
The question was,
So from the opinions expressed in the performance, I found that for these young people, smart energy systems are a useful innovation regarding energy management and distribution. Young people recognise that the education system as it currently stands is not aware of or informed by smart energy technologies, and that despite being a generation that is most integrated with personal assistance technology, these young people have significant concerns over the reliability and safety of AI in smart energy systems. Now, in this case study, you'll notice that the staging is entirely different. The actors are interacting with one another rather than directly addressing the audience. The show takes place in a more performative theatre space, and further conventions such as stage lighting, particular blocking choices, and the dressing of the performance space were employed in an attempt to make the performance more accessible to a wider public audience. In the post-show discussion, however, this was unfortunately unsuccessful for some, as they were not able to successfully access emotionally the lived experiences of these participants. This, I have found, is due to a lack of direct address in the performance, reducing the direct connection with audiences that took place in the previous iteration of the work. Despite this, many audience members spoke on the value of presenting citizen voice in a way that was accessible, and that this method and approach added value to existing reporting strategies that already make up the evaluation practices in the sector. In post-show surveys, all audience members agreed or strongly agreed that this arts-based approach to presenting research data was useful in communicating opinions of these young people towards energy innovations. But I'll now move on to my third and final case study, which for context is the only fully funded case study which was provided by the British Academy Small Grant Scheme. So the UK Music Festival brings with it a range of benefits to local areas, communities and individuals. Often, however, these events are accompanied with instances of crime and antisocial behaviour, including disruption of property, substance abuse and sexual violence. The excitement at these events can lead to vandalism, with attendees sometimes damaging stages and amenities due to impulses fueled by alcohol and peer pressure. The anonymity provided by large crowds might also embolden some individuals to engage in criminal acts that they would not normally commit in other contexts. Substance abuse is often prevalent, as attendees frequently consume significant amounts of alcohol and illegal drugs, raising the risk of harmful behaviours and compromising safety and health. Ultimately, while UK music festivals celebrate culture and community, the potential for antisocial behaviours necessitates comprehensive planning and prevention efforts to protect attendees and improve their overall experience. Policy strategies attempt to reduce these issues, however, little research has examined the effectiveness of these strategies long term. So, using the Reading Festival, a notorious example of antisocial behaviour, from the years 2000 to 2024, this project was interested in the connections and correlations that could be made between policy interventions, cultural and environmental factors, and a perceived dramatic reduction in crime and antisocial behaviour at Reading Festival from 2000 to 2024, from the perspective of its staff, contractor managers, volunteers, and crucially, its customers. So for this case study, a more mixed methods approach was taken. So an anonymous online survey was sent to ticket holders of the 2024 Reading Festival year with the intention to gauge up-to-date lived experience of those who attended and the extent to which the policy may have affected their behaviour on site. Following the same evaluative performance methodological structure, semi-structured interviews took place with current and past staff members, contractor managers and ticket holders as the basis of evidence gathering. Those interviews were then edited, sent for final sign-off, and an evaluative performance production was presented in 20th of February this year. So this performance, in comparison to past iterations, featured professional actors. However, due to a last-minute dropout, I had to act as 3 separate white male characters, all in their 50s, so you'll see a little clip of me at the start of this next video. The performance was presented at the Ellen Terry Theatre in Coventry to an invited audience of festival public staff, representatives from the Coventry City Council and Reading Borough Council, academics from dance, social science, behavioural science and economic geography disciplines, participants of the research and interested members of the public.
It's probably 20 years ago now, we started dividing the campsite more into zones and having a zone manager, and actually giving a bit of identity to the campsites. It didn't mean that we didn't get some bad behaviour. 2012, I think, was the last time we had significant bad behaviour. But we just started to put TLC campsites. So you had a campsite manager, you had some campsite helpers, and that philosophy in the campsites is really what's just evolved.
So they got rid of campfires, and I think that was a very smart decision, as much as people complain. It is just so, like, I can tell you my experiences throughout all the years where the fires just got worse. For example, one year I camped in Orange Camp, which is a lot closer and a lot rowdier, and it got to the point where people were like, they've got their deodorant cans and they were like having lighters and saying they've got flamethrowers, and you would literally have, I mean, that year at least there were people coming around with like the extinguishers and being like, you will get kicked out. So that was like, I did feel more of like a presence of safety measures as the years went on. But yeah, definitely getting rid of the fires, 100%.
because you would get that on the last night, like on the Sunday night, you'd end up getting what they call camp wars. So people would just be like setting fire to things, throwing them at other people. Like it's crazy. Like it's actually crazy. Another thing that they've introduced, which I think is really good. I guess I don't know how it is like in camps anymore, because last year I camped at Eco Camp. That was my best experience of camping at Reading. Everyone was very respectful. I don't know if it's just because everyone was older, because I'm 22 now.
So as this project also included an anonymous survey, it's key to note that the results I'm about to speak about set alongside more qualitative findings from the performance sharing event as well. So the most well-known policies that were spoke about were security presence, entrance and gate search policies, medical assistance on a 5-point scale. The behaviour warning system and campsite assistant teams had the lowest awareness scores. The most effective policies in reducing antisocial behaviour were the eviction policy, welfare assistance, and medical assistance. 52% of attendees noted security interventions, including evictions and item confiscations. However, 62% reported ineffective interventions, particularly lax bag searches, leading to increased drug usages. In terms of social, cultural, and environmental insights, 52% reported being influenced by festival-related media coverage. 48% were influenced by portrayals of festival culture on social media and TV. 43% reported that the behaviour of other attendees directly impacted their actions at the festival. 38% noted that the presence of security and staff influenced their actions, while 43% were influenced by the accessibility of festival facilities, for example, water stations, toilets, and welfare hubs. 58% reported being influenced by initiatives such as #LookoutForEachOther and #AskForAngela, suggesting that public kindness campaigns were well received. 43% said that environmental messaging, for example, littering policies, impacted their behaviour, but only 10% stated a significant behavioural change. So many audience members noted that this Headphone Verbatim approach, through the use of vernacular speech, heightened their engagements and created an authentic sense of connection with the participants' experiences. The technique blurred the line between documentary and performance, making it feel more like an intimate conversation than a staged reenactment. The absence of heavily edited dialogue allowed for natural storytelling, reinforcing the credibility of the lived experience being shared. Some felt that the format made them more aware of the broader implications of festival management policies by hearing first-hand testimonies rather than just reading about them. The physical presence of the performers and the co-presence of the audience created a communal experience. The storytelling process was described as similar to reading a novel, where audience members could form their own mental images rather than being spoon-fed visual representations. Some participants reflected on the impact of hearing voices without seeing the original speakers, suggesting that this allowed for more objective engagement with the content, free from preconceptions or personal biases. Some audience members found it difficult to distinguish between characters, especially when similar accents were used. Now, we tried to mitigate that in rehearsal by the actors adopting visual cues, postures, and seating arrangements. But the choice not to use fixed visual indicators such as specific costumes or name tags was debated quite heavily, while some felt this helped maintain the fluidity of perspectives, especially since many of the interviewees had multiple roles at the festival over years. Others found it occasionally confusing. A suggestion was therefore made to further structure the performance spatially, for example, placing staff characters on one side and festival goer characters on the other to enhance clarity. But the discussion reinforced the importance of understanding policy shifts at the festival, particularly regarding fire bans and security measures. The festival's fire ban was a major talking point and was a major feature of the performance, which did not appear as much in the online survey responses. Some felt that the ban came too late, while others reflected on its role in shifting festival culture. There was an acknowledgement that while safety measures were necessary, they also led to the perception that the festival had become more boring over time. The discussion highlighted the broken windows theory, drawing parallels between staff attentiveness and festival goer behaviour. When staff demonstrated care and engagement, attendees were more likely to respect rules and behave responsibly. The shift in policing tactics from confrontational to a more supportive and visible presence was noted as an important factor in changing festival dynamics. So these insights, along with findings from the survey, have allowed us to develop a best practice framework as an evidence-based approach to mitigate crime and antisocial behaviour at live events. The FR model is an evidence-based approach developed through years of festival management and security evolution. The model focuses on addressing known patterns of crime and antisocial behaviour before they escalate through proactive risk mitigation, shifting attitudes towards customers from adversarial to support via a philosophy of care, coordinating efforts between security teams, campsite managers, welfare staff and emergency services through integrated security and safeguarding, encouraging festival goers to take ownership of their own safety and well-being through visible peer support networks and community-led interventions, regularly reviewing and refining these strategies to reflect shifting trends in festival culture, otherwise known as adaptive policy implementation. So this has allowed us to sort of list off some key policies that have had some high impact on crime and disorder at Reading Festival. So the ban on campfires, removing campfires has significantly decreased the risks of injuries, arson-related incidences, and increased aggression. The introduction of zoned campsite managers and campsite-specific teams has improved on-the-ground oversight, ensuring a rapid response to emerging issues. Instead of a broad police presence, specialist trained officers now handle specific incidences, including sexual assault, robbery, and drug-related offences, reducing unnecessary confrontations. Welfare tents, air hubs, neurodiverse friendly spaces, and safeguarding leads and coordinators now form an integral part of the festival infrastructure, ensuring vulnerable individuals receive immediate support. Security firms are now better integrated and coordinated, ensuring that resources are deployed where they are most needed. And public awareness campaigns and stronger policies around crime deterrence have shifted attitudes, leading to greater accountability among attendees. So the research so far has demonstrated the potential of arts-based approaches as transdisciplinary interventions in evaluation research and policy impact. This approach bridges the gap between policy data and lived experiences, making evaluation findings more accessible, engaging, and emotionally resonant for audiences. The performance effectively translated complex policy changes into real-world narratives that highlight both the intended and unintended consequences of these interventions. By fostering empathy and active audience engagement, evaluative performance moved beyond passive consumptions of data, encouraging deeper reflections and discussions among policymakers, researchers, and the public. A key strength of this method and its ability to capture multiple perspectives and contradictions, offering a more holistic view of policy impact. Unlike traditional evaluation reports, which often prioritize quantitative outcomes, evaluative performance allows for nuanced, human-centered storytelling that reveals how policies are experienced on the ground. Additionally, the format's anonymity provides a safer space for candid testimonies, making it particularly valuable for research in sensitive policy areas. While challenges around clarity and representation and interpretation must be addressed, these are surmountable through refined staging and performance techniques. Ultimately, evaluative performance has the potential to transform how evaluation research informs policy by making it more participatory, reflexive, and impactful. By combining storytelling with rigorous research, this arts-based approach humanizes policy discourse, enhances stakeholder engagement, and creates a more dynamic space for policy learning and adaptation. It demonstrates that effective evaluation is not just about measuring outcomes, but it's about understanding and communicating the deeper social and emotional realities of policy decisions. Thank you very much for your time.